Game Awards are over, but not mine. As I like to do yearly, I like to compile a list of my personal top 10 games of the year. Of course, these are my own selections, so some of you may agree or disagree, and I'd love to hear from you in the comment section. What would you have chosen? And of course, if a game is out that I haven't played yet, I'm not going to include it in the list. There are some games I was interested in this year that I just haven't gotten to yet, like Sonic Frontiers, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, just to name a few. Maybe they would have made the top 10, maybe not. But enough talk.
How about you?
Number 10. Destroy All Humans 2 Reprobed. Released on August 30th for PC, PS5, and Series X. I usually don't like to put remakes on a top 10 list, but I'm going to cheat a little bit this year. Destroy All Humans 2 is not a new game. It came out in 2006, but Destroy All Humans 2 Reprobed isn't simply the original game with a shiny coat of paint. It's a remake from the ground up with modern graphics and modernized game elements while retaining the spirit of the original. It's different enough to where it feels like a brand new entry in the series, whereas the first game was a celebration of the 1950s UFO craze and rumors of Men in Black keeping their existence secret. Destroy All Humans 2 sees Crypto in a new decade traveling to different regions across the Earth that are exaggerated versions of real countries like Russia and Japan. There's plenty of optional side quests and collectibles to keep you busy, plenty of new outfits to unlock that drastically change Crypto's appearance. And this may not be a draw for some to become potential players, but for me it's a huge plus. That early 2000s inappropriate adult humor is unapologetically intact. Some of it's pretty shocking by today's standards, so if you're easily offended, it might not be for you, but I adore it. This game was genuinely a blast to play from beginning to end, so if you'd like to be reprobed, make sure to check this one out. Number 9. The Callisto Protocol, released on December 2nd for PC, PlayStation, and Xbox consoles. The spiritual successor of one of the greatest survival horror games of all time, hyped up by the gaming community as the next Dead Space. Does it live up to that reputation? Sort of. While the game looks and feels like Dead Space with its overall atmosphere and grotesque mutated enemies, it doesn't really play anything like it. And while maybe it's not fair to compare it to Dead Space since it's a different game, I think it is valid to do so in this case because Dead Space was very much used to sell and promote this game. If the reputation of Dead Space wasn't involved in the way it was, Callisto Protocol might have flown under the radar completely. Contrary to Dead Space's focus on limb cutting with your plasma cutter and other weapons, Callisto Protocol has a strong focus on melee combat. I actually think that was very refreshing for a while. I would have liked to put Callisto Protocol on the list a bit higher, but one factor kept me from liking it as much as I wanted to. Most enemy encounters feel exactly the same. Sure, there's multiple guns you can unlock through the game, but I haven't really found many instances where the game requires you to change up your gameplay. I've been playing on the hardest difficulty, and most enemies can fairly easily be killed by the cycle of dodge left, dodge right. When they attack you twice in a row, then you attack with the stun baton. Rinse and repeat. At first it's kinda cool when you figure that out, then it gets very repetitive. And the lack of a map system can sometimes present difficulties since much of the environment looks the same, and the manual save function is essentially pointless since it just loads the last autosave, at least at the time of this video. But putting these criticisms aside, I still think the Callisto Protocol provides enough value as a really entertaining survival horror experience, which sees Space Josh Duhamel trying to make his way through a prison colony on one of Jupiter's moons in an attempt to get out with his life after an outbreak of monsters. And it goes all the way with the gore. Sometimes I actually let the monsters take me out just to see how many different ways they dismember and mutilate you. It's really cool. It's no Dead Space, but there is enough here to still give it a spot as one of the best games this year. It's still worth giving a playthrough, but I do recommend picking it up once it's a bit cheaper, maybe not at the full $70 price tag. I can see this game being in bargain bins in a couple of months. Horizon 2 Forbidden West, released on February 18th on PlayStation consoles. I've seen criticisms that Forbidden West feels a bit too much like the first game, and I would agree, that is true. If you finish the first game and jump right into this one, it feels like a continuation. Like you never really put the controller down, the game just kept going. But I like to think of that as not fixing what's not broken. And the feeling of familiarity does decrease a bit once you get into the campaign for a couple hours and reach the actual Forbidden West that the game is named after. There's plenty of new weapons, new tools, and most interestingly, new tribes that you get to meet in a completely different part of the world with their own unique looks and cultures. With Horizon Zero Dawn, putting the pieces of the story together was what kept me going in this huge open world, discovering what happened to humanity in the world before that time. In Forbidden West, armed with those answers, now you have to solve new mysteries and find a way to stop an incoming apocalypse. Once again, story is the strong point here that keeps the vast open world from feeling too large. You want to keep going, you want to keep getting upgrades, and you want to see what other kind of crazy robots pop up that we've never seen. Number 7, Stray, released on July 19th on PlayStation consoles and PC. Stray is a strange game, especially if you're not a cat person. I'm not a cat person at all myself. In fact, I think I might be allergic to cat fur. I'm more of a dog person, but having said that, Stray is an amazing game where you play as a cat. And you do exactly what you think cats do. You walk around, you meow, and you jump on stuff. It might sound boring on paper, but this is one of the most unique and relaxing games I've ever played. There's no shooting, there's no loud explosions, no stress, no action-packed alien invasions, robot dinosaurs with lasers and chainsaws. Nor does it need any of those things. This is a game that's family-friendly, a game you can pick up and play anytime and just chill. I've spent hours playing through it while my daughter enjoys watching me just walking around being a cat. Stray tells the story of a lost cat trying to find his way back to the surface after being separated from his other cat friends. So it's your job to figure out how to get from point A to point B with your drone buddy, while solving puzzles and moving objects. And the environment is a futuristic world, a walled city where humans now seem to be replaced with robot citizens. Part of the fun is exploring this strange future and attempting to figure out where all the people are, and interacting with objects around you in a game filled with fantastic level design. Ghostwire Tokyo, released on March 25th on PC and PS5. I feel like this game was heavily advertised, and for a time people were talking about it. Then it came out, and I didn't really hear anybody talking about it. I'm not entirely sure why that is, but it's one of my favorite games available this console generation. It's very much a supernatural open world FPS, but not really a typical shooter. In fact, you can easily reskin this game as a Marvel game, and you have Doctor Strange the video game. The combat involves multiple spells that you shoot out of your hands and fingers, supernatural weapons that allow you to pull the core out of evil spirits that look similar to Slender Man. Open world games seem to be the craze nowadays, and these games have become some of my favorite offerings, giving us hours and hours of exploration and interesting side quests, and that's all here, as you work to capture and restore the spirits roaming around the city after a mysterious man in a mask begins using them for nefarious purposes. And you play as a man possessed, trying to save his sister after she was taken by this masked man. And much like many open world games, there's a whole skill tree system that allows you to customize your gameplay how you prefer to play. Number 5, River City Girls 2. Releasing December 15th on PC, PlayStation, and Xbox consoles, and Switch. Full disclosure here, I was provided a free copy of this game and have been playing it for about a week before this video was made, but that doesn't affect my opinion on the game. Having said that, River City Girls 1 was awesome. 2 is also awesome. It feels familiar if you played the first one. Familiar to where it feels like comfort food. A good beat-em-up is always welcome in my book, and River City Girls 2 handles the beat-em-up formula as well as the first one did. Instead of saving your boyfriends, now the bad guys have taken over your school. The River City girls get expelled and spend so much time away from school playing video games that they forget all their fighting moves 2 months later. Yes, that's actually part of the story, and it's quite hilarious. Now they embark on a quest through the streets to fight crime again and regain their skills. And there's some really cool help this time. You can play as the girls, the guys, or new characters. And right up my alley, they heavily incorporated Double Dragon elements, even making Marion, the helpless girl from Double Dragon that gets punched in the stomach. She's now a playable character this time, ready to kick some ass and a bit more muscular. River City Girls 2 is fun to play with a friend, the humor and dialogue is well made, and the sprites have so much personality. And much like the first game, the soundtrack and the boss battles are prime examples of how it's done. If you like beat-em-ups, River City Girls 2 is exactly what you expect out of a good one, and it's got plenty of replayability between its multiple characters. Number 4, Final Fantasy VII Crisis Core Reunion. Released on December 13th for PC, Switch, PlayStation, and Xbox consoles. This actually pushed something else out of the top 10 that I had before. It just recently came out, and I liked it so much, it had to go in the top 10. To add some quick notes, I don't typically like turn-based RPG mechanics, with some exceptions. For example, I really liked Chrono Trigger, and I enjoy most of the Final Fantasy games. And admittedly, I never played through the original Crisis Core on PSP. So Crisis Core Reunion is mostly a new experience for me, and thankfully no turn-based mechanics. Reunion is a remake of the PSP Final Fantasy VII prequel, telling Zack's story with updated graphics and gameplay. This game is simply fun as hell and plays like a really fast-paced hack and slash that's got magic abilities and RPG mechanics for leveling up in stats. It takes what Final Fantasy VII Remake did with the more action-oriented gameplay and it adapted it into Crisis Core to create something closer to it as part of the Final Fantasy VII Remake era we're getting now. The graphics have been built from the ground up to take advantage of today's main consoles, and much of the story, from what I know of, has remained intact from the original Crisis Core. The best aspect of Crisis Core Reunion is, quite frankly, the combat. It encourages you to go through and do all the side quests, earn better equipment, summons, and unlockables for the roulette system that I didn't like at first, but I came to love it. It's a randomized slot system that rolls as you're fighting that actually results in some exciting moments during battles, like making you suddenly invulnerable, giving you unlimited magic for a time. It allows you to do summons. It keeps every encounter refreshing and unpredictable. As far as how it compares to the quality of the original PSP experience, I can't really comment on that, but the Crisis Core Reunion experience is something I want to boot up and play right now just talking about it. Gotham Knights, released on October 21st on PC, PS5, and Series X. This is a game that very likely is not on many top 10 lists this year. Admittedly, it was widely hated on, and I disagree with most of the criticisms. However, it is a flawed game. Sometimes the lack of a high FPS mode is obvious. Some of the endgame has a ton of padding to extend the game's length artificially. For example, did we need to fight 4-man bats instead of just one? And some of the patrolling gets repetitive with generic gang members. However, something keeps bringing back to Gotham Knights over and over, even though I've already beaten the campaign. I keep playing it. That's how I know I loved it. The Batman universe has some of the best villains out there, possibly the best villains in all comics. And Gotham Knights uses some like Clayface that aren't widely used in these really fun, epic sections. Not to mention, I'm glad that Joker doesn't once again hijack the entire plot. It's a refreshing storyline. Gameplay-wise, it plays like a diet version of Arkham Knights, using some of its mechanics, but very much more simplified. I also love customization and gear systems in general in video games. And Gotham Knights has a ton of unlockable costumes with changeable pieces and different stats, and the story has the Bat family dealing with the loss of Batman and has genuinely emotional moments involving Alfred and the group's memories of being partners with Batman. Now, if you compare it to the Arkham games, no, Gotham Knights doesn't hold a candle. But if you are a Batman universe fan, put aside the fact that Gotham Knights is not an Arkham game, nor was it ever trying to be one. That's very clear while you're playing it. You'll find an immersive experience that makes you feel like you're cleaning up the streets of a suffering city that lacks a Batman, and the sense of progression feels satisfying as you level up. Plus, you can play the whole thing with friends online. Number 2, God of War Ragnarok, released on November 9th on PS4 and PS5. No surprise here, the latest outing of ex-God of War Kratos and his son Atreus is every bit as good, actually surpassing God of War 2018. It's bigger, it's prettier, it's action-packed, and it's long as hell. I may have given Game of the Year to God of War Ragnarok, but what kept it from going to the number 1 spot for me is a very small criticism and an otherwise outstanding masterpiece of a game. Sometimes it does feel a little too familiar. Sure, it's a follow-up to the last one, so of course there's going to be plenty of similarity, but for a large portion of the beginning of the game, it felt like something I've already played, even revisiting some of the exact places we've already been to in the last game. But pushing through the beginning segment sends Kratos and his allies into new realms filled with new enemies, vast regions to explore, and incredible boss battles that require precise timing, switching up blocking, parrying, attacking. There's a lot of strategy in the combat. At the official Game Awards, I know it snagged a couple of awards for story and performance, and it completely deserves them. Every voiced character in the game gives it their all, and the game is hard to put down every time I play it. 1 hour of gameplay in suddenly turns into 6, and I've gotten nowhere. But it's because I'm encouraged to explore and learn about the world around me as much as possible. If you want to blow through the main campaign and the main missions, you can, but it is in your best interest to take your time with the game. I want to spend as much time in it as possible. If there is another God of War game after this, it's going to be really hard to undo what they've done here. And number 1.
I think I want to nominate this award to my Reformed Orthodox Rabbi Bill Clinton. Thank you, everybody.
Nope. Number 1. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge. Released originally on June 16th on PC, Switch, PS4, and Xbox One. I think there's actually a PS5 version now. I like to give the status of Game of the Year to a game that does something new, something unexpected. And this was a hard choice because I've really been enjoying God of War Ragnarok, but as a gamer that absolutely loves what we now know as retro games, I think Shredder's Revenge accomplished what I thought to be impossible. Putting the nostalgia factor aside, it surpassed Turtles in Time as the best Ninja Turtles game. It's the same style of gameplay, a simple left to right beat 'em up, but there's so much variety in the levels and the places you go to. There's added attacks, there's a leveling up system tied to each character. This is Turtles in Time pumped up to the max. This is what Turtles in Time would have been if it were made today. The graphics are bright, they're colorful, retro styled, and filled with personality. And you can play as characters outside the Turtles themselves, Splinter, Casey Jones, even April. And they all feel different from each other. The story has you chasing down the bad guys as they try and rebuild Krang's suit while Shredder's up to no good, and there's plenty of bosses from all across the Ninja Turtles mythos, even more obscure ones. Every level made me excited to see who was waiting for us at the end of the stage. It's a game that encourages multiple playthroughs to max out every character and accomplish every challenge. If you want to play with friends, it even has up to 6-player co-op. I mean, it's chaotic and you can barely tell what the hell's going on, but it's there if you want it. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Shredder's Revenge is my #1 undisputed game of this year. And that's the list. Now go buy every game on it and play them. You won't be disappointed.